Good evening, everyone. It's Frida, and I'm here to do Ask a Witch. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to do it on Wednesday. Going through some really hard things and trying to get a home. So, just very, very in the cave. Very unable on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. But here I am today, and today we're going to talk about marking your temple and the sacred body art and piercings. This is an area of study that I actually have lectured on in universities and taught in college classrooms, so an area that I know pretty well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the anthropology and history of tattooing and body marking, and then I'll talk a bit about a more modern use of those aspects, and then I'll talk a little bit about my own tattoos. Feel free to post any pictures of tattoos that you have that you consider to be sacred, and tell us about them if you would like. I love seeing people's artwork. So let me just begin by saying, as an anthropologist of more than 30 years, including study and teaching, and as a tattoo artist of 14 years, I have a decidedly different take on body markation than I think a lot of people in the general public. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of propaganda about tattoos. The idea that they're somehow only linked to prison, or only bad people have them, and stupid stuff like that. But tattoos are actually thousands and thousands of years old. In fact, there is archaeological evidence, bog bodies and ice frozen humans that have tattoos that are as much as 10,000 years old. Tattoos are not new. Tattoos have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Some of the earliest tattoos are interesting too. It's pretty clear that all the early stuff was done with some kind of tapping stick, or some kind of sharp tooth of animals. Shark's teeth are often used for tapping stick type tattoos. Tapping stick is a very slow but time-honored ancient method of doing tattoos. But we wonder, if there was some relationship to scarring. And one of the anthropologists that I worked with for many, many years suggested that scars may have been the first kind of body marking or sacred passage sort of thing, and that there's some evidence that humans would rub ashes or carbon, which is what black tattoo ink is made out of, into wounds to leave a permanent mark. Tattooing in the very early times was used medicinally, and if you look at some of the tattoos, a lot of the tattoos from 10,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, they are either all in places that we recognize as acupuncture points today, or they are anthropomorphized animals, meaning animals that are also kind of human-like, that are, doing things, spiritual beings, active interaction with humans kind of things. But a lot of it is dots over areas of the body where we have a lot of nerves. And so it seems, at least in the beginning days of tattooing and body marking, there was an aspect of a sort of badge of honor. There was an aspect of healing associated with it. And one of the things that I find super interesting about body marking is that in really every other culture of the world, except for first world European industrialized culture, all the body marking and piercing is generally done by shamans. And the reason for that is that shaman are trained in working with the energetic field of the body and also with the gods and goddesses and spirit beings. And the soul, of course, is viewed as a spirit being by a shaman. And marking the body is considered a sacred penetration of that energy, or even almost like a band-aid, like a patch, like a soul patch. Tattoo may be used to close an energetic opening in someone's energy field. And so tattoos have a really ancient history. Piercing also, things like piercing and stretching, putting things like plugs in your ears and, bones and rings and things like that in your nose, and piercing nipples and faces and really everything else. A lot of it, in almost all of it in other cultures, is spiritual in basis. It's done for spiritual reasons. Now, the thing that I want to address is why the West has such a weird idea about tattoos. And from my studies, what I discovered is that tattoos were used to mark people for things they did that were unacceptable in society. And so they would permanently mark you. It's kind of the idea of the scarlet letter, or being marked by a letter. You would get a letter that was like, for example, Fray Maker is a person who would fight. And so you get an F tattooed on you or someone who's a church brawler, would get a particular letter, things like that. And so it was a way to set you out of polite society. I also found out that when Darwin traveled around the world on the HMS Beagle, he noted in his logs that he came across no cultures that were unmarked, that all cultures were marked by tattooing. And so there was an important aspect to that. And so, upon returning to polite English society, the view of tattoos was a lot, the quaint, the aboriginal, the, savage sort of behavior. And so it was not considered upper class or part of polite society to have a tattoo. So if you had a tattoo, you were marked as being somehow less than what the rest of society that was unmarked apparently is. So that being said, which I think is fascinating actually, we've discovered that tattoos have been a part of our human experience always. Modern humans, as soon as they were able to write, even before that, our evidence of writing is also about 8,000 to 10,000 years old. So it's kind of part of, I think, symbolizing ideas outside of the mind, like writing or painting is. And so a way to communicate who we are a little bit, but also a way to carry with us symbols that are sacred, symbols that we feel have power, symbols that we connect with, and also a way to identify others in our group. Like, for example, if you look at the tattoos, facial tattoos of the Maori, they are particularly designed having to do with the clan or the family that possesses those designs. And so, for example, the Queen's family has her own designs that only she may wear, and her family. And so why would you do this? Why would you tattoo your face in that way? Well, think about this. If you live in a culture where you don't wear clothes or don't wear much clothes, how would you know when you were approached by royalty unless you had some indication? And so instead of, a big fancy outfit with a big crown, they tattoo their faces to indicate when they're coming through the forest towards each other that this I am royalty and you must bow. So tattoos can communicate standing and family. And so they have a really rich history that has a lot to do with cultural structures, a lot to do with spirituality, a lot to do with self-identity, belonging, a lot to do with being a badge of valor or status. They have quite a lot of things that they do, and therefore that makes them incredibly important. Not only to understand, but to respect as a cultural behavior that has profound meaning for those who have body decoration. Now, how common is body decoration? When I say body decoration, I mean piercing, artistic scarification, tattooing, body painting, all of that kind of stuff. And I know as an anthropologist that those behaviors are all universal. Every culture practices them, every one. So when we have a behavior that everyone in the world, or at least every culture in the world, practices, to an anthropologist, that's a very important thing. What I think is interesting is that we've spent a lot of time studying how people eat and how people do family and how people follow religion, but we don't study tattoos very much, and we don't study a number of other things that have stigma in the Western world, like entheogens, for example. And so I think for those kinds of things that have stigma, I think it's important for us to talk about them so that they are well understood. Now, I have done quite a few tattoos. I never had to do it as a first job, so I had the opportunity to be able to do it for whatever or whoever I wanted to. I could turn down tattoos. If someone asked me to tattoo something that I didn't want to tattoo, I could say no. And I did a few times. What I like to do is spiritual symbolism, and part of the reason is because people will talk about what it means to them while they're being tattooed, and there is an energetic exchange between artist and recipient of the tattoo. And so for the first couple of years I was tattooing, I would do a circle and then do a tattoo, and then it just got to the point where I was only just doing sacred tattoos and laying out some stones, but generally not doing a circle. And I still will do tattoos in a circle, but it's been a while since I've done that. And so I've done everything from a full back of angel wings to, other kinds of spiritual beings, fairies, little devils, gremlins, religious symbolism that includes runes, bend runes, which are overlapping runes, snakes, dragons, all kinds of things. And what I have found is that it's a euphoric experience. One of the things that happens when you're tattooing is that endorphins are released pretty much instantaneously. Your body doesn't like to be poked with a needle thousands of times, and so there's a couple of things that happen when you put needle to skin. And the first thing is an adrenaline rush that includes endorphins, and it's a natural pain management mechanism. I have found that people who have had broken bones or have had a baby tend to be less sensitive to the tattoo needle, mainly because their bodies have already learned how to majorly medicate themselves with endorphins. So the minute you put needle to skin, they're totally numb. Any place bony is painful, no matter what kind of endorphins you have. But I've done quite a few, and I've found that people get really kind of high. Like I've had people, pass out. I've had people orgasm. I've had people become lightheaded from the process. And I think it's not just the physical response, but an energetic spiritual one as well. Your body is the vehicle that you drive through life, and many religions would say it's your lessons. It's what the gods have given you to walk your lessons. And so when you mark your god or goddess given temple, you change its energetic field. And that's very, very sacred, which is why lots of tattoos, most tattoos in the world are done by shamans, because shamans understand the management of energy, and that's what they've done for thousands of years. They understand what they're doing with that energetic field as they do that work. And there are tattoos that are not available to everyone. You know, there are Native American tattoos, there are Maori tattoos, there are Hawaiian tattoos, the designs of which are kept secret from other cultures because they are for those members of that society only. They hold extreme spiritual significance. And one example that I think is really fascinating is, you know, there's a special tattoo that the Iban have allowed to be tattooed on those who have taken a head. They are headhunters, or at least they used to be many years ago. And they, when someone took a head for the head house, which are used as guardians, they would get a flower on their chest, on the chest shoulder area. Well, at this point, there's just one little old man who still has that tattoo. He's almost 100 years old. And the reason is because no matter how macho or cool that might be, no tattoo artist in Borneo will do that tattoo unless you bring them a head. And it's actually been said exactly like that. So there's a cultural meaning that it does not cross over from other cultures, and that is in many ways a badge of honor, and a spiritual practice as well. And so they don't allow just anyone to have that tattoo. So that's another important aspect. Now, of course, there are less spiritual aspects to tattoos too. Like people get their area code tattooed on themselves, or their cultural flag or whatever. And that is that aspect of belonging. When we have an aspect of belonging where we say, yeah, I'm from the 916 or 707 or whatever. It's a way of saying, hey, everybody out there, this is where I'm from, and you can connect with those people. I think a lot pagan symbolism too. At least one of the things when I got the tattoos that I got, they weren't really about belonging for me, but they have served that purpose. So I'm going to talk about a few of the ones that I have. The first one I ever got is on my back, so I can't really show it to you. But it's a triskel, which means it has 3 spirals in a circle. And it's the triskel. Triskels were concepts. All the different ones have meaning. And so the one that I chose for my shoulder was the triskel of readiness to receive ancient knowledge. And it was the first tattoo I ever got. I was in my 40s, and I got it with a girlfriend. She has the same one. And she has hers, I think, on her shoulder also. So we both got that tattoo. And it's in blue to be like woad. And I really feel it sometimes, like when I feel like it's very magical when when someone says something really true to me, like something that's just like profound universal truth. I feel it. I feel that tattoo. And that's a very interesting thing. So I feel like it's a very magical tattoo. And that's the first one I got. And I've had that one for about 17 years. And then the next one I got was a tattoo on my foot, which is a sun and moon. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a sun and moon conjoined. And a bunch of symbols around the outside edge of it. So masculine and feminine and opposites all around the sun and moon to symbolize walking in balance. That's why it's on the top of my foot. And man, did that one hurt. Tattoos on the foot are really painful because they are in a bony place. I also did it in the middle of winter, and so it was really hard not to wear shoes, and I ended up crushing some of the lines because I had to wear shoes. So I ended up learning that it's not a good idea to tattoo your feet in the middle of winter. But I really like it because I think it does help me balance and find my way in the world in a balanced way most of the time. Then the next tattoo that I got was this tattoo here on my arm, on the inside of my arm. This is AOM. And that tattoo is a symbol of the coven that I led for 7 years. That did the Bear River camps. It was called the Amber Oak Moon Coven, so AOM, which is also incidentally how you spell Om in the old languages. My priest that I worked with at that time, Paul Currier, also known as Grandpa Witch, had the same tattoo on his hand. Grandpa Witch has since gone into the underworld, and so my spiritual partner in crime, if you will, has blazed the trail for the other world. And so that one symbolizes, it has oak and acorns and the symbol of goddess and god to symbolize not only my connection with Grandpa Witch, but also our magical connection to the goddess and my devotion to the coven. And that energy is still playing out 20 years later, so that's very interesting. And then the next tattoo that I got was one on my chest, which is this one here. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can make it so you can. And I got this when I was the May Queen of Onavon. And you can see there's a dragon and a goddess in the center. This is my own artwork, but I didn't do the tattoo. Joe Butt, or Joe Draka, who actually owns Accent Tattoo in Ukiah, did this. And it symbolized my devotion to Onavon and my devotion to the spiritual path of the goddess. And this tattoo is 15 years old, and no, spreading or anything like that. It's faded a little bit, but not very much. It's not a place that sees a lot of sun. Something you should consider when you get a tattoo is the sun will fade the ink just like it'll fade your clothes. So you want to protect your tattoos with sunscreen when you're out in the summer. And then the next tattoo that I got was also from Joe, and it's the cuff around my arm, which has some interesting symbolism. Let's see if I can get this closer. You can see the chalice there on the pentacle with the blade and the chalice, which represents the Great Rite. And you can also see the oak leaves, and if you go around the arm, you see the different seasons represented, and also day and night are also represented there. So all the balance and seasonal stuff that is the pagan path. And I got that because I felt like after being May Queen twice, I needed to commemorate the energy that was and the commitment that was. I had my first May King from Bear River and my second one from Onavon. And both of them are still very, very dear to me. That is an unbreakable bond. Think twice before you decide to become a May Queen or King as a partner to another person. My experience has been really good, but it's also there's been difficulties with it as well. But it's a lifelong connection. It never goes away, and so it's very important to walk that walk with someone that you really love and know you'll be connected with later no matter what happens. Not necessarily a husband or wife, but someone you know you're always going to care about. And then the next tattoo that I got was teaching someone how to do tattoos, and did some stars and some spirals and a moon, which I don't know if you can see, but a moon on the ankle. And also the little moon was done by me when I first got my gear. And because I really needed to play with it. And it's not a good idea to tattoo yourself, by the way, because it's hard not to jerk and move around when you're poking yourself with a needle. And then the last tattoos that I got were the back of my neck. And it's a row of bind runes, which were tattooed on me by family. My son did one, my husband did one, my daughter did one, and it was they're protective runes, which basically mean my family has my back. And so I always have that protection with me. And there are other tattoos I'd like to get, but my tattoos for me are like jewelry I can't lose. And I love them. I really love them. And I could have a lot more of them. There's an energy about them that's very euphoric and spiritual and intense and connected. And I really have a very spiritual connection to doing them as well as receiving them. I'm thinking seriously about getting a license here in Washington to do tattoos again. In California you don't need a license, but here you do. But it's not terribly expensive. It's like $250 or something, and I mean one tattoo and you got that back. And you have to take a class on bloodborne pathogens, which I've done like 4 or 5 times as a college teacher, so not a big deal. And I have all the equipment and ink and gear and everything. And I have the knowledge of how to do it and experience. And I don't really think there's anyone doing totally spiritual tattoos that I've met. So I think I might get back into doing that. It's a wonderful practice. And I really enjoy hearing what people have to say about what the tattoos do for them and what they mean to them. I do still have a few tattoos up on a website my son put together, but a lot of my most spiritual ones are not there because they're in places like between the breasts or between the legs or something like that, and they're just not public. They're not for the public. But the name of the web page is Artemis Inc. INK. And .com, and there's other agencies now using our Artemis Inc., but not any other tattoo agencies that I'm aware of. And so I've done it for a long time. You want to see some of that stuff? I've also got a bunch of tattoo stuff on my Facebook page that's pretty far back in my pictures. But yeah, tattooing, marking your sacred temple, piercing, body painting, all of that stuff, it doesn't just affect your body, it also affects your energetic field and changes the way you perceive the world around you and also the way you're perceived, but as well can be a very healing thing. I've seen it used for psychological healing, emotional healing, healing from abuse, healing from self-infliction of injuries. It's an interesting behavior that has a lot of cultural significance for every culture of the world. And so therefore I think it's an important practice to understand. So I'll be posting this Ask a Witch on Patreon over the next couple days. I have one more Ask a Witch for this year, and it will be next Wednesday, and I'll be talking about Yule and Yule symbolism and celebrations and meditations. And then I will be offline for a couple of weeks to move. So this not only is the last one of the year, but is the last one in this location. And then I will be living in another location in Shelton, where I will be setting up a proper altar area and video area to do them so that I can do demonstrations of things as well for you. You can find my videos and also my herbal videos and vlogs on patreon.com/cronewitch. And of course, they're always here on Blue Moon. So if you have any questions for me, please feel free to type them at the bottom and I'll be happy to answer them. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope you'll forgive me for not broadcasting on Wednesday. And hopefully everything will be smooth sailing from here, and next week's vlog will be fabulous, and then you will all have a wonderful transition at Yule. And then we will be looking at the return of the sun after the 21st. So, you know, we're at the deepest point in the cave. It's not unusual for people to be a bit withdrawn at this time of year, even with all the festivities going on, Christmas and all that. This is the end time. So I'm in. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm full in. So I will see you next week, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for watching. I will see you soon. Bye.